So let's let this set for a second. I want to see how long it takes to get over to YouTube with the delay. 6 seconds. Let's see if we got to refresh. I think, yep, we're live, guys. Let me just bring up the super chat. Pop that out. Kill that. Griffin and Abby K. I'll be with you shortly. That's that. Okay, we're good to go. We're live on YouTube. We're live on KRA. Nobody is in the room yet, which is fine. So we start it now. I guess I should introduce myself, which is I'm Mike, the guy behind KRA. And I don't know where to look. There's the camera. Like I was just telling these guys before we were able to figure out, or I was able to figure out how to log this in correctly into YouTube is like everything else we do at Keep Rock Alive, it's by the seat of our pants, no rehearsals. If it works, it works. If it crashes and burns, oh well, we'll try something else. There's the old theory of throw enough stuff at the wall, see if something sticks. That's me. Anyway, Abby K, everybody I think knows you. Griffin, pretty much anyone that's been following for, since about 3.5 years. You were actually one of our first 100 followers. Had no idea who you were, but you caught my attention. And then about a year later, I think Abby, you had just started your account like early 2018. You followed, and I got the same thing. Exactly what I was looking for in the whole idea of the KRA mission, which is future rock and roll, and that there are kids out there doing today what I was doing, and people who were recording music. I was a fan back in the 70s. They still exist. One of my biggest arguments, I think you both seen me literally fighting with people on Keep Rock Alive, that kids are no different than we were. It's just a different time, next step in the evolution of rock and roll. But as we go along, like I was telling before we started, this is my first time ever interviewing anyone. So if I seem like an idiot, it's because I am.
We'll be idiots together.
Right. But I'll come up with my own style, which is usually just talking 100 miles an hour as we go along. Or like I was telling you, I could try the Chris Farley method and say, hey, remember when you did believe it? It was awesome. So ladies first, Abby from North Carolina, 17 years old, rock and roller. What's the story? How'd you start? What got you involved? What made you a fan? What made you want to play? All that stuff. You know.
So I would say, I hope my dad isn't watching because I owe it all to him. I don't want him to, I don't know. I don't want him to get a big head about that. But so when I was around 5, I wanted Taylor Swift songs on my iPod, and he had this rule that if he put those songs on my iPod, he would also give me the good stuff. So I got my Taylor Swift, and I got Iron Maiden, and I got Justin Bieber, and I got Kiss. And he did the same thing for my sister, and she was so annoyed by it. She was so angry that all these stupid songs were on her iPod, but I unfortunately did not know how to take songs out of a playlist because I was 5 years old. So I had to listen to them, and I actually started to really like them. And I mean, I guess that's really where everything started for me. And then I didn't start playing until I was a teenager, but I've been a fan of rock music since I was 5 years old.
Dad's awesome.
Yes.
That's called good parenting.
Mm-hmm.
Real quick, we got Tim Loves Music is in the chat room on the super chat and said, idiots unite. So apparently he is listening.
That's right, Tim.
Tim. All right. But I love your dad, number one. Griffin, I know your story, but not everybody else does. How'd this all start? When you were in the womb, you started playing piano. No, go ahead.
Yes. When I was birthed, my mom also gave birth to a piano. I don't know how that worked, but it did happen. Um, but actually, it all started out actually when I was really, really, really young, like less than a year old. I had this terrible disease called RSV. It's a respiratory disease, and I was stuck in the hospital for a long time. And the only thing that would ever calm me down was classical music. And my parents would give me these little Baby Einstein DVDs, and they were just like these just classical music set to like these toys just like being demonstrated one at a time, and I was just fascinated. Just the idea of just this wonderful music just playing behind just incredible, like, I don't know, a music box or like a Jack in the Box or something like that. But that kind of hooked me at first, and then whenever my mom would drive me to school when I was like in preschool or kindergarten, then my mom would play the Beatles radio because she knew that there wasn't really anything to be worried about as far as language, as far as subject matter or anything like that. Plus, it was just good music, so she would just keep that going, and all just kind of snowballed, and I kept listening, and one day my brother and my dad wanted to learn how to play guitar together, and once that happened, I had to go with them because I was single digits. I couldn't exactly stay at home by myself. So I went with them, and I saw the drum room, and I fell in love. I was maybe 4 or 5 years old, and I just wanted to hit all the drums and hit everything, and just wanted to go wild. And I wanted to keep going back and keep going back, and eventually I got a drum set, and that turned into piano, and that turned into guitar, and it turned into bass and ukulele, mandolin, and all these different instruments. And I've just been fascinated with music and how everything just fits together, and how, because I love bands like the Beatles, Queen, and Zeppelin, where all these bands have equally talented musicians, it fascinates me as far as how they're all able to work together and make one cohesive sound, even if they have their own influences and whatnot. And I think that's what makes rock and roll so unique, is that there are people who have, like, a lot of bass players in rock and roll have loved like funk, R&B, jazz, and drummers. They've loved jazz, but they've kind of like come together with guitarists that like blues, and vocalists that like soul, and so it just kind of all blends together and makes this kind of rock and roll sound. And it just fascinates me, and that's why I'm still here playing all this rock and roll, because I'm just entranced by it.
You guys are an example of what, until 4 years ago, I hadn't even discovered yet, was, I was the typical classic rock fan. And in another episode, we'll talk about me. This is about you guys tonight. But the evolution, I call it the DNA of rock and roll, all the way back from, let's say, you can even go to the Swamps and the jazz clubs in the 40s, through the blues players and the doo-wop, a cappella, Elvis Presley, Bill Haley and the Comets, those guys, everything through the 50s, Chuck Berry, Buddy Holly. That rock and roll DNA, that's when those strands started, and it's never stopped. And that's what Keep Rock Alive is about. You guys, the kids that are coming up, just picked up a guitar today, heard a classic rock song, or listening to their parents' music, records, at whatever, just maybe discovered they love the instrument, whatever it takes. It's never stopped. It has its ebbs and flows, but you are both perfect examples and proof that rock and roll is alive. It's not going to die. Like anything else, if anything, rock and roll is the one constant over the last 60 or 70 years, while other genres have come and gone. We've seen a lot of flashes in the pen. Times have changed. The one that still always consistently survives is rock and roll. That's why this Keep Rock Alive. I wasn't looking to This wasn't really wasn't even a plan, but it just happened to happen. Took an old, stubborn classic rock fan like myself and realized, wow, these kids are no different than us. And I mean, I love what I'm hearing, both of you. So that's we're going to start talking more about styles now. You guys are Griffin to me. If I was able to, let's say, magically turn the clock back to 1977, and we just dropped him anywhere, you'd never know he wasn't there. You know what I mean? He was born. He's a true throwback. Abby, you remind me more of what I'm going to call the new sound. I hear it in your music, your most recent song. Excellent job, by the way.
Thank you.
And like I said, I even bother you every once in a while. When's the next one coming? When's the next one coming? Now you've got me hooked because there's a couple of different flavors going on there too. I want to hear what you're coming up with next. Griffin, he's what I grew up on. And like I said, he could have grown up with me. His love for music and his style of music that he loves, I think, is pretty obvious. Let's look behind him. Yep, it's all over the walls.
McCartney, Beatles, more Beatles, Kiss. There they are. Yeah.
Music. So now we're gonna reality. And I said I gave you a little heads up. I'm gonna just say 2 words. And I want to hear or see your first reaction. 2020.
Yeah. It's a year.
Something, you try, and I've tried to, keep the negative off of the page, because what I'm doing is I'm trying to promote and expose new music, new artists, up and coming artists, unsigned artists, independent artists, the 25 and under crowd. Then the next, the bands that have been playing for a while, the bands that have been playing since, let's say, 2000. But I want to keep it more current. Everyone's had their chance. It seems as though last year when I was starting to say that, we missed an opportunity with the 50th anniversary of Woodstock, that could have been a launching point, a worldwide exposure for a lot of younger bands. At the time, Greta Van Fleet, they were scheduled to play. It just looked good for rock and roll that we were going to be on the main stage all over the world with all the press behind it. That fell apart. I said that was a lost opportunity. They could, it was just all about money. Live Nation got involved. Promoters, the original promoter, I don't know why he sold out. It happened. But there were good signs. Rock and roll was starting to get, you were starting to see the music and hear the music in commercials. We hadn't seen that. We saw it during the Super Bowl. Again, even though it wasn't on the main stage, it was in the marketing. So at least there was a presence. You guys have seen, we're not included anymore, let's say, in the award shows anymore. Billboard music, American Music Awards, all of those things. MTV, which is, I think, irrelevant right now. It's a new day and age. You guys are pretty much on your own, and that's why there needs to be some support, at least in my opinion, from within the rock community, whether it's the older fans or guys, anybody that's trying to, we have a lot from overseas, people helping out, highly involved in what they call in this emerging rock. You see them all the time. A lot of other different accounts, people, all in support of the future of rock and roll. Then we get 2020. And this is where I want to ask you guys, your opinion. Obviously, it's been rough. Right now, in New York, we just found out today there's even a possibility now we're going to be going backwards, which, just pretty much, I can't say puts a final nail in the coffin of live music right now here, because there just isn't any. There's no live music, hasn't been since March. And, I see no end in sight. So the New York metro area, which I was talking to you, Abby, over the summer about, or maybe in the spring, about coming up the Jersey coast, getting into some of the clubs, New York City. Griffin, same thing with you, trying to string some together and make it worth getting on a plane and coming up, maybe hitting 3 or 4 clubs. If we can go up and down the coast, great. It's not going to be there. So the question is, you guys, as young artists who have been releasing new music, my question is, how are you hanging in? And what are your plans, as we move forward, new music, release of music, merchandise, streaming? How have you been surviving? What do you see, let's say over the next 6 months? Have you?
I would say 2020, there's so many things that you could be like disappointed about. Like, for example, I was supposed to go on my first tour. That didn't happen. But I feel like a lot of people are overlooking the disappointment and creating more opportunities because you have to. Like, I think the live streams, that's become like this huge market. I did a live stream back in July that we actually created an EP out of now of 4 cover songs that we're going to release maybe December 4th. Um, there's just so many opportunities being created that we didn't know we had before because we didn't have to have them. And another thing, social media, that's bigger than ever right now. Because really, that's one of the main ways you can promote your music and your career right now because you can't play the shows. So I would say there's a lot to be disappointed about, but I'm actually kind of proud of how the music scene has come together and figured out ways to make it work.
That's a good point that you made there. That's something that I've driven, and I always push people to do and ask people to do. If there's something you like it, share it, follow the artist. If you use Spotify, follow them on Spotify, wherever. Any follow is a good follow.
Yeah.
It's good. All those numbers are good. They matter. And you just said it. Griffin, your opinion.
2020, yeah. It's been a year. I was at the beginning of this year, I was planning to use this year as the launching point for my band Violent Device. And it's my whole plan for going forward has kind of like gone off track and I've taken myself somewhere different because even artists like Paul McCartney, who wasn't planning on releasing an album this year, has suddenly found a whole lot of time to be by himself and he has all this time to work on musical sketches that he's been thinking about, just stuff that's kind of been floating around. He's had time to just kind of work on that. So with like lockdowns and all that, you have time to just be by yourself. And personally, I'm someone who just likes to fill all my time with playing shows and getting to see my fans in person, because that's what I think is all about, is just getting to see the people who are supporting you and supporting your music and also supporting live music in general. I think that's what a big part of what this is all about. But all these lockdowns and kind of like being like advised to stay home and not go out as much, it's helped me to remember that I should be, creating and also pursuing that side of the music business, because as much as it is fun, so much fun for me to play shows, and I'm actually playing every weekend this month, which is really, really amazing, because I know that it's hard for anyone to find shows right now in these times. But it's encouraged me to kind of to sit back and think about these song ideas that have been floating around. So that's one thing that I've found is positive about this whole 2020 experience.
Now, when you talk to, if you were going to talk to the fans and the followers, I say it's all about the music. That's my latest tagline. I don't know. See, I've been running that a lot lately, and that's what it is to me. It's all about the music. The music is you guys. It doesn't matter what my opinion is. Doesn't matter what anybody's opinion is. I don't believe in reviews. I don't believe in judging. First and foremost, and that's why if you scroll down Keep Rock Alive now, I've tinkered and what gets people engaging and what gets people following, and, without, asking for it. Play the music. The music speaks for itself. The music will sell itself. Rock and roll is rock and roll. There's different flavors of rock and roll. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. I call rock and roll ice cream. And it's like Baskin Robbins. There's 31 flavors, but it's all ice cream. So I notice lately on Keep Rock Alive, people have been very receptive And that's why I just keep feeding the music to everybody. And these TikTok videos now, you've been doing it, right, Griffin? Because I think
Yep.
your mom, and she was like me, you don't, what is this thing? And I said, well, you got to go where the kids go, and this is
I
what.
was like y'all. I was like y'all. I wasn't exactly
That's right.
head
Well,
first into TikTok.
anyone, especially a guy like me and most of the followers, you see everyone. I think is 80% of the followers on Keep Rock Alive, and most of the younger bands' fan bases are older rock fans. Another thing we're going to talk about in a minute is capturing the youth, and I'm going to ask this from the perspective of two young artists under 20 years old. But how can I say it? I just concentrate on the music, not reviewing it, give it to the people and let them judge. So let's flip it to the other side. One thing we don't have are younger fans. Abby, you're 17, just finished up high school. Griffin, you're 19. You just graduated last spring, right? This past
Yes.
Right, yeah, played the national anthem. I forgot. That seems like, it's funny how it seems like yesterday and a lifetime ago at the same time. It's just,
yes.
Everybody's minds are mushed this year. But
it's so hard to keep track of the days.
Well, my question is, let's say in school, or the kids you hang out with, the kids or the kids you bump into, or let's say on the street or in the hallways in the high schools. Where do you, what vibe in music is in the schools? I mean, I think I know. I don't want to say what I think it is. When I was in school, rock and roll dominated. Late 70s, when I was in junior high school, going into high school in 80, rock and roll dominated. Your friends, any rock and roll fans? Is it mostly they listening to pop, hip hop, or does anybody even acknowledge rock and roll? And if they don't, what is their reaction or their thoughts when you talk rock and roll to them? What do they say?
So one thing that my high school did that was really cool is the 5 minutes in between classes, they played music over the intercom. And unfortunately, it was very rarely anything close to rock and roll. Because I think it was chosen by the students. But they actually, when my first single came out last August, It Should Have Been Me, they actually played that over the intercom. But the thing is, they played it for like 2 months, is the 5 minute in between every single class. So people hated the song by the end of the 2 months. I was like, please take my song off there. Everyone hates it now. Um, but yeah, I think there's like that was something really good in my school to do to like kind of throw a little bit of music in there. I don't think they realized that it was good, but I mean, they did do like a rock and roll week, I think 2 or 3 times in my high school 3 years. So I guess like it kind of gets thrown in there a little bit in school, but I think it's not always received very well. And I don't know why.
And that's what you get from the kids, just literally going and being there with them.
Mm-hmm.
Griffin.
As far as when I was in school, I had really, really supportive friends and supportive teachers. Because of course, even when I had to go out to The Voice and American Idol, I had to be out in California or New Orleans for American Idol. I had to be out there for The Voice at least for a month, and I couldn't go back. I couldn't just kind of drop by at school and kind of pick stuff up. They really had to be supportive, and it was really, really helpful for them to constantly be there and constantly be supporting this weird dream that I had that was different from the people who just, wanted to play football and who wanted to be, I don't know, an engineer, something like that. But they were all really, really supportive of my music, and sometimes they would play it in class, at the beginning of class, which was really, really nice. But as far as other rock music, music that just regular rock music that even would be on the charts, I really don't think that it was getting listened to as much as say pop or rap even, or hip hop, because it just wasn't, I guess just wasn't the culture. But I knew subconsciously that a lot of people at my school liked rock music. I don't think they were just actively seeking it out, because they weren't I guess actively looking for rock and actively looking for that type of style. They're just kind of, I guess, going through like Discover Weekly on Spotify and seeing what was there, which is usually like the more pop stuff and hip hop and rap and all that type of stuff. Because I know that a lot of people in my school love bands like Queen, and they loved it when songs like "We Are the Champions" or "We Will Rock You" would come on, Bohemian Rhapsody. Um, so I knew that it was somewhere like in their subconscious that they liked rock and roll. I just never seemed to see anyone seeking out rock and roll as much as pop or hip hop or rap.
And when you say seeking, they're finding mostly classic rock anyway. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't really think they were going out and looking like at the rock charts. I don't think, actually, in general, I don't think music was as I don't know if purposeful is the right word, but it wasn't like a purposeful decision to like go out and listen to music. I think it was just kind of a way to like complement like a situation, like a gathering that they were in. Like it wasn't really like a thing that they would be like, oh, let's listen to what, I don't know, this band is putting out, or let's listen to this, or it wasn't really like purposeful.
Well, basically, even let's say the bands that are on the Billboard now, like who is it now? If you go on the rock charts on Billboard, it's what Panic in the Disco, and I mean the bands I don't listen to. Ghost has been doing okay, but they're not even they're not new. They were late 2008, 2007, I think they got together. So I mean they've been around, and they're more older, let's say cultured musicians. But the thing is, and now you just gave me a pretty simple segue into this. My next say line of questioning is, you said culture, and this is something that I've said a lot in a lot of chats and a lot of talks I've had over the last 2-3 years now. Is I feel like in 2000, that's when the culture changed. That's when things that were acceptable before were no longer acceptable after. We won't go into politics. We won't go into gender, anything like that. Let's just keep it pretty vanilla and plain and simple. But there are certain things, and we'll just use an example. A lot of songs, let's say like a Motley Crue came out with in the 80s, probably wouldn't fly very well right now, especially if you played them on mainstream radio. So that being said, a couple of things, let's say in you guys, your writing, is that in the back of your mind? Because I've spoken about this before, where I've got an old school attitude. So I think rock and roll is always, I'll say it like this: it's supposed to be the middle finger of music. It's supposed to be the rebel. When you tell us you can't do this, you can't tell us what to do. That's been the rock and roll attitude all the way to the back to the 50s and black leather jackets, how it all started, punk rock in the 70s. We've always been the outlet for the kid that was told he couldn't, didn't run with the big crowd. We've always been a tight-knit family, got each other's backs. And when something went down, we were all there for each other. Since 2000, has two things, in your opinion, rock and roll, let's say, lost a little bit of an edge? And when you're writing your music, are these things in the back of your mind that you don't want to offend people? You got to take into account, let's say, I dislike using this term, but political correctness, that you don't want to offend anyone. You're afraid of, you don't want to upset part of your fan base. And that affects, let's say, just the basic writing of your music, especially the lyrics. Whoever wants to go first this time, it's up to you.
You can go ahead, Abby.
So I guess in my writing, I'm 17 years old. It's not my job to influence people anyway like that. Um, So I try to kind of avoid that in my writing. I don't take sides in my writing. I just write what comes out in my heart. And sometimes I do have to go back and change some things so nobody assumes anything. Nothing comes out the wrong way. But I definitely try to avoid that in my writing because, again, it's not my job to, I don't know, it's not my job to do that. Um, so I just like to kind of avoid it at all costs. Um, and so far that's worked out pretty well for me. But then also now we're getting into a time where if you don't pick a side and you don't voice your opinion, that also can be seen as bad. So I think, especially right now in 2020, if you say something, you're going to offend people. If you don't say something, you're also going to offend people.
That's a good way to look at it. Griffin?
That's actually a really, really good point. As far as writing music, I haven't really thought about it in a very like conscious way of like changing what I'm writing about to appeal to a different modern audience. Um, and at least from where I'm coming from, the thing that makes that I'm the way I'm trying to appeal my old school music to a newer audience is to write what I guess write the type of old school music that I love while making the production just a little bit more modern. Um, because that's something that Jet did when they were around in the early 2000s. Because they really had that old. I guess it was almost like AC/DC in some songs. I've also been listening to some songs where it's very McCartney-esque. Um, but it hasn't really affected, I guess, like political correctness, if we're going to talk about that. It hasn't really affected the way that I'm writing music because I just like, and I don't really write a lot of my lyrics. I'm more of like the arranger and the music and like the riff writer and all that type of stuff. But I've noticed when I work with my mom and working on lyrics, we mostly like to write about just stuff that unites. I like to just write about stuff that will unite me with with the people who support me, like stuff like rock and roll, like love, all that type of stuff. So times haven't really affected the way that I write about the type of subject matters that I like to sing about, you know. But I totally get that it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird times right now where if you say something, it can be used against you, but if you don't say something, it can also be used against you. So it's kind of hard to find the balance. So yeah, that's actually a very good point, Abby.
Yes,
Thank
'cause,
you.
I mean, you guys are living in a tough time where expression can be taken in so many different ways, and a lot of things, taken out of context. And you also just said something as well, Griffin, um, just connecting with, let's say, again, kids your age. Um, this is something that I've also mentioned is you have to connect with your peers and the generation around you. And that's always been the backbone of each successful era of rock and roll. Let's say all the way back to the 50s, it was the teeny boppers. And the reason rock and roll became so popular so quickly was not only was that the music captured them, it was also affordable because of the 45. And the 45 was a cheap way for bands that didn't have a lot of money to put out a record, which back then was basically delivered to the DJs or the scouts that were out there. If you watch That Thing You Do, that's was a pretty good representation of how a band could be discovered just playing, a gin joint or a pizzeria or a roller rink, whatever back then. But they'd cut a 45 and people would shop it around to the DJs who would play it, and then one town would hear it and they'd blow up. But that carried music from the 50s, which the original, let's say, first thing incarnation of rock and roll was the 45 that through the 60s, and each era and generation was supported by that generation's or that time period's youth, teenagers into the 20s. That happened in the 50s, that happened in the 60s, happened in the 70s. You guys you, especially Abby, you know what happened in the 80s. Grunge came in the 90s. In my opinion, maybe I'll ask what you guys, your opinion. There's been a lot of really good bands since, let's say, grunge era, but I don't think there's been that explosive band, that let's say culture changing band out of rock and roll, whether it's a subgenre, of rock and roll, which was grunge, since Nirvana. It just hasn't happened. I don't think it's the music's fault. There's been a lot of great music. I think culture around it changed, and we just haven't been able to, let's say, resonate with the kids that are 15 to 25 right now, to the point where, and this is something, and I'll ask your opinions again, and this is going to lead into streaming music and Spotify, things we keep hearing a lot about. A lot of people are anti-Spotify. There's not a lot of money to be made by it, and then blaming the record industry for the demise of, let's say, rock and roll in the mainstream. My opinion, mainstream is run by supply and demand. It's like McDonald's. I don't like McDonald's. I think they're horrible hamburgers, but they've sold billions and billions.
I didn't think we were gonna get political today, but if we're gonna talk about political McDonald's, okay.
I love Burger King. I'm not supposed to eat it, especially I've got some health issues. Didn't stop me 3 times last week, but whatever. So it's not funny.
Oh my!
I gotta have my Whopper. I just hold the. Anyway, let's say just the industry. I don't blame the industry. It's like any other business, and this is something that all of us have to be realistic, and you deal with it as artists. If you need equipment, gear, it all costs money. Everything's money. Let's say I was able to, you guys were able to hook up and do like a swing up here in Northeast or New York City. It's money. You're gonna pay for, you drive up, plane, bring your gear. You're gonna have to stay somewhere, rent a vehicle, whatever. And this is something I try to tell everyone. And this is why I say, I know things are tough this year. And I say a lot is money doesn't grow on trees. Surviving this for a lot of bands isn't happening. I've seen a lot of bands go dark over this summer. I haven't said it. A few bands I really like just stopped. There's been nothing. Social media stopped. Everything just came to a standstill. And I feel even bad. I messaged a few and just, they kind of just waiting just to see how they're doing and, if they still exist. But Spotify, the music industry, and, how to earn, as opposed to not having the generation of your youth, meaning kids your age. When I was falling in love with bands, and I forget guys like, that were in the bands that I love, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, all those bands of the 70s, they weren't much older than I was then, same way they really aren't that much older than I am now. They're in their 60s, I'm in my middle 50s. So we were their support. When I was in junior high school, all you saw were denim jackets with magic markers, we drawn the band names on there, patches, all over your binders. I'd say 80% of the kids in my junior high were rock and roll. And then you had, when I went to high school, it was rock and roll and the Guidos, because I was brought up on Staten Island, a lot of Italian kids driving around in Camaros and the hair slicked back. But we didn't talk to them anymore. So my point is, you guys, and there's no secret, don't have that support. We try to get as many of the classic rock bands to acknowledge and support you, but the trick is, how do you see winning those pop and hip hop fans that are, say, 18, 20 years old, or even 12 years old, coming out of elementary school into junior high school. School systems are different, but you know what I'm saying. The preteens to early 20s. That's where the mainstream media, when you turn on the radio right now and everybody says, especially the classic rock fan, that, oh, the music sucks, I can't find the rock and roll. No, that's because there's no money in it. Big labels, big media are supported by big advertising, and that's how they sell their product, sell their airtime. So they want what are people going to listen to? It's either the classic rock stations or the pop and hip hop, which the kids in school are listening to today. What do you think has to happen for you guys, all these bands and artists that we see on social media and people and working their way up to rock and roll now will have to do to regain a foothold in the mainstream?
I think there's three things that are very important to that. One, what it sounds like, two, what it's about, and three, making sure that you're getting in front of them. So, one, I don't know if you're able to tell, but I try to have a little bit of like pop factors in my music. I like to do like 80% hard rock and then 20% pop melodies. Um, a lot of my songs, it should have been me. That was E minor, G, C, D. Like those were the four pop chords. Um, but I think then I took that and I rocked it up. It actually started out as a pop song, but I added some distorted guitars and some awesome drums, and I came out with a rock song. And then what it's about, I think you have to be very relatable. You can't write about problems that your actual audience, which is the older generation, you can't write about their problems. You have to write about what everyone younger that you're trying to be your target audience, you have to write about what they're going through. Um, for example, I wrote a song, It Should Have Been Me. Everybody's had an It Should Have Been Me moment. Dirty Love is about a bad relationship. Everyone's had a bad relationship, whether that's a romantic relationship, a family relationship, a friendship. Um, so I think it's just very important to keep it relatable also, because nobody wants to sing along to a song that they don't have any connection with. And then the third thing, getting in front of the right people, I guess I would have to say that's TikTok. You have to be where everyone else is.
Yeah, Griff.
Yep.
Told you.
That's it. I mean that's pretty much it. I mean, definitely TikTok. That's the whole reason why I'm on TikTok is to reach out to different people who aren't on social media platforms like Instagram or Twitter, on those platforms as much as they are on TikTok. And it's important just to go where your fans are, and again, writing songs that your younger fans will relate to. And as much as I do like having fun writing like intricate guitar parts, intricate drum parts, it's there's the whole saying, keep it simple, stupid, because that's what people like to hear, just the regular, just like the power chords and the straight ahead, four on the floor, and it's it's the same thing about keeping it a little bit of pop, but also maintaining the rock persona, I guess. Because that's something that Paul McCartney, and of course I keep pulling back to Paul McCartney because he's like my idol. But he didn't know how to rock out, but he also had this great ear for melodies, and because it was so great, it sounded like a pop melody, because that's what most melodies, that's where most good melodies fall under, is because they're poppy and they're popular and they get stuck in your head. But as far as reaching out to new people through making new music, I think nowadays it is harder to do it because, like you said, with Spotify, it's a lot harder to, I guess, to boost the music just by listening to it nonstop, because it takes a lot of people just to boost the music to a new popularity. It takes like a lot of new people to get that number where it needs to be in order to reach even more people. Whereas with, like, as you said, sending records to DJs, you can, whenever you're sending records to new DJs, that just plays on the radio. And if you like the song, then you look it up and you kind of see if it's in the charts or not. So it's just different times, and the whole money issue of making songs. The money's just not at like making songs for the radio, because of platforms like Spotify. And that's why playing live, that's why I devote so much of my time to playing live is because not only do I get more of a direct relationship to my audience, but also it's a better way to financially support myself and give myself the ability to create new music and have a little bit of more financial support to do that, because you can't get that just by making one song. Like if you can't make one song, you can't just get like the money you need to make another song just from that one song. You kind of have to, playing live is really where, and that's why I spend so much time with it, is because it's so rewarding emotionally and mentally, and also it's just nice to see fans, but it's also the way to get your financial support if you want to keep your thing going. And like you said, with these bands who have gone dark, a lot of these bands have really focused more on playing live than they do like going into the studio and making new songs. And I think that's the reason why so many bands have gone dark, is because playing live, for some bands, playing live is one of the only times like during a year that they see each other. And it's a very sad thing to think about, but if you're constantly gigging with each other, that's a way of team building. It's a way of strengthening your relationship with your bandmates, and it's very tough when you're locked down and you're discouraged from going out and seeing live music. But I know that was a lot, but it's definitely tough with like Spotify and all that type of stuff. Kind of, it's different for rock music nowadays with all that type of stuff.
So I think it's it's one of the toughest times, say, to be a rock artist right now. A lot of people missing out on great music. I think we all agree on that. Abby Crispy is here. Says we're really living up to our name. Now, got you on. We're pushing an hour, but I think what we're going to do is we might start to wrap this up, and we're going to absolutely have you guys back on again, because this has been getting my feet wet myself for the first time doing this. And I tell you, I think anything that I can do that if it earns you one fan, mission accomplished. And that's the way I look at it for everyone now. You guys, everyone else that we see that we post and promote on the page, if it gets you one fan, that's a plus. And I think if everybody starts to do the same thing, they like something, they retweet it or share it, tell a friend on Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, whatever. If you guys want to give your information, shout it out now. What your social media connections are, go ahead and do it, because I'm going to save. We're going to have our one little thing. Every show has its thing. We're going to have the on the spot final question, which I warned you, but I didn't tell you what it is. But I think it's pretty cool. So first, let everybody know what your social media tags are.
All of my social media is at Abby K on bass, and my website is abbykonbass.com, and all of my music can be found under Abby K.
My social media, YouTube, you can just look up Griffin Tucker and it'll pull up, most likely, I hope. Facebook is Griffin Tucker Music. Twitter and Instagram are GKT Rocks. TikTok is something, I think, with GKT Rocks, or I honestly don't know. But if you look up Griffin Tucker, it'll probably pull up. And my website, which will have all that stuff listed somewhere on the website, it's www.griffintuckermusic.rocks, and that's .rocks.
Cool. All right. This one's pretty simple. And like I said, I thought of this today at work, and I don't know what made me think when I said it's going to be a cool question to ask you two guys. Maybe you go first. If you could pick.
Man. Here we go.
To record one song with, who would your dream collaboration be with?
Only one?
How many do you need?
Good answer.
I need two.
You need two?
I need two.
Okay, you can do two.
Okay. Realistically, Lizzie Hale of Hailstorm. Oh my goodness gracious. Please. And then number two, very unrealistic because I play bass, but I want to play with Steve Harris because he's really, really, really cool. And he's on my wall, and he's on my wall again, and on my wall again. Because he's really, really, really cool. And I would love to record with him, but I can't because I play bass and he plays bass. So I guess I would have to say Lizzie Hale.
All right. Well, I guess we're gonna have to tag Steve Harris and Lizzie Hill here when we start spreading this thing around.
Please.
Griffin.
I'm sure everyone who knows me would have guessed that my dream collaboration is with Paul McCartney, because even on his own time during 2020, when he's already made I don't know how many number one hit singles and records, but he's taken time out of this year to make new songs, and he wasn't even planning on releasing a new album this year, which is going to be called McCartney 3. He's going to be releasing a new album, and it was just so sudden, and I'm so hyped for that. And I just admire that even these 50 some odd years later, he's still finding inspiration and finding a way to make new songs that hopefully they don't sound too much like his other songs, because I haven't heard McCartney 3 yet. But he's still finding ways to make new songs and just keep perfecting his craft, even though I think it's already perfect. But he's such an inspiration, because he's so driven, and it's really just the music that keeps him going. And that's how I am too. And I think it would be interesting to see what our dynamic would be like. Of course, in a dream situation, but I think that would just be amazing.
I'd be curious to hear it. I think you got the goods to hang with him.
Well, I hope so.
An autographed picture or something.
I don't want him to walk in the studio and be like, you're all right. Can we do this another day? And it just kind of never happens. No, I hope that I have the goods to back it up.
Just show him the video when I think you were 9 at the piano playing his music. That might
somewhere around there. Yeah, Maybe I'm Amazed. I remember seeing that again. I hadn't watched it in a while, but of course, I saw it a little while ago, and it brought back memories. But of course, I've always loved Paul.
You make my head shake. So, but on a side note, the Beatles. I'm not going to go into my story again, but in my opinion, and I know that I get a lot of arguments about this one, when it comes to impact, probably the most impactful band as a whole, and not just on rock and roll, I mean on music, single-handedly, that they forced change across the board. I don't care what anybody says. And McCartney, Lennon, I want to say top 5 songwriters of all time. Give them that much. You know, if you want to get into an argument with people, top 10, okay, whatever. Like I said, I'm 54 years old. It's 2020. I mean, when I was in junior high school in the late 70s, listening to these guys. There's new music on the radio, and here we got Paul McCartney coming out with new music next month, right? I think it's December.
December 11th.
AC/DC next week. Are you kidding me? I mean, did I see this? So that's why I say, the Godfathers are still there, and the kids are, looking for some help. A little, I'd like to see a lot of these bands, and this is something else I talk about, is, and I know everybody's, gotta, I don't say in it for themselves, but they gotta make a living. Some of these bands, you see all these bands that are still on tour, money, if they can make it, they go out and they keep trying to hit the road and get on stage and make some money, but they could reach down and, give a pull up to bands. You've had it happen a few times. You've opened for some of the, some decent acts as well, but I'd like to see them start taking, what I call today's artists, along on the road with them, or if they pull them to town, bringing on some of the local acts to open up to them. And I'm so tired of I don't want to see the same bill I saw in 1986. If I'm going to go see a classic rock band for nostalgia, because I see everybody, they go crazy, you know, the Rolling Stones, and those are the absolute stratospheric kind of bands. But, you know, you get the middle of the road 80s bands that are, you know, still running around town. At least bring the local band up to open for you. And I'd be satisfied with that. And they'll even help sell some tickets. And this is something that maybe if we do a second, let's say a second chat with the three of us, we'll go into that, you know, fighting for the music, you know, getting your gig, stuff like that, even deeper into the music. But for now, I think we had a pretty good, it's a pretty good start. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this, and whatever I can sneak out of it, I'm going to share it. Any good points, we're going to share and tag certain people and see what happens. Like I said, doesn't hurt to try. So guys, I got to say thank you. This was really cool. And
Thank you so much, Mike.
I love doing this. Absolutely love doing this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close out the meeting. I'm going to log right back in on Twitter. I'll message you guys because this way it'll kind of end it. And we'll just go from there. And that's it.
All righty.
Rock on. And everybody keep rock alive. Support new music. Support new rock and roll. No excuses. That's it.
That's right.
Rock on.